Hello and welcome to episode 264 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and we are the same group as 2 weeks ago, here to talk Final Fantasy X-2. So, part of Team EMP, alongside me, is Peter T.
Hi there, Peter Triezenberg. Back to talk about more of this Girls Gone Wild nonsense.
And, last but not least, Eva P.
Girls Gone Wild. Oh god, this will be interesting. This will be fun.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe Girls Gone Mad Irresponsible, but I'm not sure we've quite hit Gone Wild territory because if anything, I mean the men are equally guilty of wardrobe malfunctions in this game.
I mean,
I feel like brother wears less clothes than Riku.
I mean, this is basically Paris and Nicole get jobs. Like. More so than that.
I mean, I made the comparison of Brother to that Dan Aykroyd's SNL character in the previous episode, but at least Dan Aykroyd was more sensibly dressed.
That's saying something.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so yeah, we're back with FF10-2. All three of us have beaten the game in the past couple of days, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I mean, I thought that the first couple chapters were sort of a flimsy main storyline with a lot of side content and optional quests, and I feel basically the same now. I think that my sort of instant reaction after beating the game was that somebody at Square Enix, some executive or some writers, wanted to make a sequel with Yuna, wanted to incorporate like music videos with Yuna with Yuna singing, and then after that a giant just a giant void of nothing else, and they sort of filled in the gaps with all of these mini games and side quests that I mostly did not love, but we can get into the specifics of that. Eva, this is also your first time playing FF10-2. What were your sort of general feelings after beating the game recently?
It was a game. I liked chapters 3 through 5 a little bit more than I did chapters 1 and 2. I don't hold a lot of positive feelings about it. They tried to do some thematic stuff at the end. Don't think it was entirely successful. And yeah, I would love more Yuna content, but this is not what I was looking for.
I think this game does trade on FF10 nostalgia at least a little bit. I mean, you do explore or re-explore a lot of places from FF10. So there's definitely some fun in seeing these characters again in those places again, but I mean, I feel it's almost wasted. It's like going into the Comlands and Xanarkand and seeing them as tourist traps, but otherwise being less interesting than they were in the previous game is disappointing to me.
I think I may have, or one of us may have brought this up in the previous episode, but like they could have done a more sort of Majora's Mask thing in terms of the reuse of assets under kind of a short period of time for development, and made something strange and kind of, that would become a cult classic and eventually a full classic in years to follow. But they didn't quite do anything interesting with these assets, I don't think.
But more, I think maybe worse than that is the new things that they do add. I just couldn't give a damn about any of them. Like I think Pain is actually pretty cool, and having her as sort of the straight man performer to the much more animated Riku and more easygoing Yuna is sort of funny. And she has cool hair and cool costumes, but like I hate Nuge and Barreleye. I hate LeBlanc maybe most of all.
The LeBlanc Syndicate is like, they're terrible characters. They are awful.
They're just the worst. I like let's go into the story a little bit. Well, actually, no. First, Peter, I want to talk to you a little bit first. You have played this game before. You said you played this shortly after you played 10 for the first time, more than 15 years ago. But so, how does your nostalgia for it from when you first played it reconcile with your more recent playthrough?
Okay, so I mean, the first time I played through 10-2, like you said, was right after I beat 10, and I think at that point I was pretty done with Spira. Like, I had, I'd gone through the same zones and fought the same enemies, and I was kind of just trying to get through it. So by the time I hit the final boss, I was pretty severely under-leveled and was hitting a brick wall. I still beat it, but it was like touch and go. And then I was like, okay, well, that was fine, I guess, and then I didn't really think about it again. Playing it again now, I'm a little warmer towards it, just because I did make a bit more of an effort to stop and smell the roses. We have talked already about this game's problem with signposting and how easy it is to miss content. Even the content that the game has that I think is interesting, like the Crimson Spheres and all that stuff, is kind of buried beneath this. It's just hard to find. It's not clear what you need to do. But I did make a point of doing some more side content, making sure I was actually severely over-leveled by the time I made it to Vegnagun this time. I was in the 60s.
Yeah, I was basically right at level 50. The enemies in the last area and the last couple bosses had me gain a couple levels, so I think I finished at level 52 or something. But it's weird. We did talk about signposting and the completion percentage thing at length in the previous episode, but it merits revisiting. Nowadays, especially in, like, say, an open world action game, we're used to checklists. We can, I mean, I don't know every single game both of you have played, but I'm imagining that it's normal for us to go into a new area in a recent game, and there will be a checklist of activities or things signposted on a map, or at least direction over what activities are available and can be done.
Yeah,
and
games nowadays are terrified you're going to miss something. Mm-hmm.
But in older games, there was, some games delighted in having secrets. And Eva, you were on episodes about Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together with me several months ago. And there are so many weird secrets in that game and esoteric means of unlocking and crazy stuff hidden behind curtains. And you could like practically hear Matsuno clapping his hands with glee when people are asking how complicated it is to unlock Shaman in that game.
And it certainly is.
Yeah, but FF10-2 has this weird in-between where they hold this completion percentage over your head. Everyone knows that completion percentage is important. They getting endgame scenes and like the final job in the job system and a lot of other things are locked behind completion percentage. But then they don't give you a list, or they give you a list with several items on it being invisible, and it's not communicated what adds to percentage and what doesn't.
Yeah,
and so it's impossible to get everything in a blind first playthrough. I feel impossible. You need to follow a guide, and most of the guides for this game that I saw are very conscious of completion percentage and guide the player intending for 100% completion.
Yeah, you can't even like there's nothing to indicate that you need to go to the Den of Woes entrance in Chapter 1 before you've even had the cutscene that introduces it to get the first Crimson Sphere. There's nothing to indicate that you need to go back to Guado Salon in Chapter 3 and talk to Macon in order to unlock the good ending. Like, although these things are not clearly indicated to the player, and while to an extent I do appreciate games that have secrets and are willing to maybe encourage people to find their mysteries, I think that can be interesting. But in this case, it really is. It's just frustrating. Like I feel like there's no way I could have. I don't know how people figured this stuff out.
I mean, I would say that games like Demon Souls and Dark Souls are a sort of a new genre that evolved around 10, 11, 12 years ago. And Souls-likes as a whole genre are about discovering secrets and like discovering hidden lore and hidden things that are not clearly communicated, and create a very high risk form of exploration within themselves. And there is fun and even a thrill in uncovering secrets in games like these, whether it's a Souls-like or an RPG. But Final Fantasy X-2 just executes it so poorly. It has these secrets and makes the secrets important, but the secrets are all stupid. It's
did you press X in the middle of the cutscene in order to get Tidus to whistle? You are not prompted in any way to do this, but you got to do it. Otherwise, no good ending.
Yeah,
you.
I mean, I did it because you told me to, and I don't think I even got the good ending. But I don't really care about the good ending because this whole game's like concept of endings. I think that Final Fantasy X-2 definitely lacks the transparency of modern game unlocking things, which is fine, but its opaqueness is just maddening, and I feel every bit as bad about it now as I did in the first episode.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I do think that the story of X-2, while it is still very flimsy and more just kind of an excuse to play in this sandbox, I do think it gets a little better in the later chapters. I think, like Eva said, I was enjoying it more from chapter 3 onwards, when there's actually like something resembling stakes. And I actually do legitimately find the Shuyin Len stuff to be somewhat impactful and thematically resonant, even if Shuyin is about as interesting as Toast.
Yeah, he's a toast boy.
You look up white bread in the book, and there's a picture of Shuyin, and people look at him and it's like, is that Tidus guy?
Yeah, I actually got in trouble for saying white bread on the podcast once. Did I tell you that story?
I remember I was on that podcast.
Right. Yeah, I compared a character in Danganronpa to white bread, saying he was boring, but someone thought I was making a racism comment about how someone's whiteness made him boring, and that was not my intention.
I think that review is still on iTunes, ladies and gentlemen.
I think it is.
Does iTunes exist still? I don't even know. What is technology?
It might be Apple Podcasts now. I'm not sure, but I agree that the Shuyin Len stuff isn't terrible, but I have seen 10 versions of that story before. Oh, they were lovers from a previous age. The lingering hate or grudge of one of them is creating all kinds of problems, and there's a world-ending super weapon. Sure, it's like I have seen all of these things in other RPGs before, and they tell us like so little about Len and Shuyin that they like. I don't feel like I have any connection to either of them. I think it's kind of cool that the dress sphere you get at the very beginning of the game has the memories of this singer from 1,000 years ago in it, and that sort of gets some of the conflict rolling for the rest of the game. I think that's actually a neat concept, but like a callback from chapter say 1 to 3 to 4 to 5. But I didn't care about Shuyin and Len by the end of the game. I thought it was a weird choice that Shuyin is possessing Barreleye, but I mean, how did Barreleye, Gipple, and Nuge even get there? Like, why did they disappear and suddenly become embroiled in the far plane?
Well, if you remembered to get all the stupid Crimson Spheres, maybe we would have found out.
Well,
I don't know.
Sure
this
didn't.
game sucks. Anyway. But
Nuge, I think I don't know who this Nuge is. Do you mean Nuji Wooji?
Oh boy, I think I don't remember if we mentioned this on air or not, but before the podcast, I mentioned. I mean, of all the new characters in this game, I might like LeBlanc and her 2 idiot boys the least. It is like having a recurring comic relief enemy, fine, but when LeBlanc is both. Is both like sexually gross and personality wise gross, and I just wish she wasn't in this in any video game. It's
yeah, she is an incredibly cringe character, both in that the game itself is cringing at her, but it's also like really mean spirited about it. Like, haha, middle-aged lady thinks she's hot and likes this guy. How hilarious! Ha ha ha. Also, she's the most annoying person in the world, and her 2 sidekicks are even worse. Like, yeah, it's every scene they're in. I just shut down inside. It's like, I don't hate the rapport between Nuge, Barreleye, and Gipple, even though we don't get very much of it in non-side questy content. I think their shared history with Pain is kind of interesting, and I do like the idea of Spira splitting up into multiple factions and that kind of being resolved. Heck, I like the 1,000 words scene. I love that song.
I mean, but for the entire country to splinter into factions and then come back together because of a concert, and then the 3 leaders of the factions ending up all being best buds from their military days. It's a little convenient. It's a little too convenient, but also just seems to happen so quickly. And having people be so moved by song that they lay down their arms is extremely Macross to me. But
it worked for Children of Men.
Yeah. But like, I mean, it's
or did it?
But you can sort of tell. I alluded to this at the beginning that the whole story is just to give Yuna 2 concert scenes and not 2 concert scenes as part of a story. I'm sorry. They wrote that song and planned that scene before writing anything about Nuge, Gipple, and Barreleye. I truly believe that.
Oh, I 100% believe that. I mean, and that's one of the few parts of the game, of this thing, where the game actually has like an identity of its own. That's like kind of like, okay, I see where you're going with this. And these stories mirror each other. It kind of connects to Yuna's own feelings that she's working through regarding Tidus's departure. It's one of the reasons why I think the normal ending, where she just says goodbye to him, is better than the ending where he comes back to life. Because it's like, oh, hey, look, there's something almost resembling a theme of moving on.
And if you have that good ending, I think this is like the worst sin of a sequel, because, with some games, they can, they exist on their own, then they have a sequel. Maybe the sequel's not that great, but it doesn't diminish the original game. But with that good ending, I think it actually diminishes Final Fantasy X a little bit, because that whole game revolves around sacrifice. And I think despite the voice acting weirdness that they had to do for that, like, I think it's communicated rather effectively. Like, when towards the end, at the end of Final Fantasy X, I was like, there was sacrifice made in this game, and it's sad, and I feel for these characters right now. But if you kind of go back on that and retcon it a bit, it's not as impactful, and it kind of destroys your main theme of your previous game, which is really insulting in some ways.
No, yeah, I agree. And it also, in a weird way, 10-2 almost seems to be rebuffing that theme. Yuna gets this big speech before the final boss, like Nuge is about ready to blow himself up. Which, I mean, okay, a little extreme, but it also is a sensible plan if you're dealing with an unsent. But then she's like, no, I don't want to do sacrifice anymore. She literally says, that sucks.
Yeah.
And
yeah, she even says, I think it's a little bit before that scene, but I think she's speaking to Riku in Pain and says, I'm going to defeat this shadow with light. And that made me think, wait a second, that sounds familiar. So this is why Peter loves this game.
I thought you were making a Devil May Cry joke there.
Oh no, well I could easily make.
She wants to fill your dark soul with light.
I mean, yes, but also Kingdom Hearts is light. I think either joke works in this scenario. But again, it's the most rote version of a love conquers all denouement to a story that with a bunch of characters I don't care about that. I mean, I had difficulty connecting here. I think the part of the game that I felt closest to or liked the most was the dress spheres, which is maybe why my favorite plot point in the whole Shuyin Len storyline is, Len's soul was inside that dress sphere, and that's why there was that confusing dream of Yuna like seeing scenes of Len and Shuyin as her and Tidus, because the dress sphere puts herself into is giving her Len's memories. Shuyin resembles Tidus. That all tracks. And then a real awkward, creepy near kiss with her and Barreleye, with Shuyin possessing Barreleye and Len inhabiting Yuna. It's a little gross. But the the new characters and story in this game, I don't feel were enough to hold the plot together, so they filled it up with side quests and optional content, but it's a lot of not great side quests and optional content. But we should at least discuss it a little bit. Do either of you have a favorite minigame or side quest that you know, like maybe you spent a little more time in than you otherwise had to?
I thought the digging minigame was kind of it was fine. Like, it's a good way to get some items, and it's just 60 seconds. You run out to these spots on the map, press a button, get an item, try to make it back before the time limit runs out. It's short, it's sweet, it's not particularly like annoying or timing based like a lot of the other mini games. Lightning towers, cough.
I didn't do any new Lightning Tower stuff. I
started it, but I didn't finish it. I was like, nope.
Yeah, I got I cleared 8 of them, and then I fought the bosses in Chapter 5 that were surrounding them because I thought you had to do that to beat the game. In Chapter 5, they give you a bunch of hot spots on the map, and I thought it was like I thought it was like Chapters 1 through 3 where you had to clear all the hot spots to move on with the story. But that's not the case at all. This is just a completion thing. But Eva, was there a mid game or late game side quest that you sort of preferred over the others?
No. No, not really. It was just kind of at a certain point, and that certain point was when we recorded the first episode. I was like, okay, think I've seen basically everything this game's trying to do, and I'm just going to do what I have to get through the game. Yeah. Just to hit the credits for it. And that was so. Yeah.
I actually there's the tourism rescue minigame in the Cavern of the Stolen Faith.
Where Yojimbo is?
Yeah, where Yojimbo is. That's actually not bad. So, because you know how it actually does tie into we turned the Calmlands into a tourist attraction story. A bunch of people went, spelunking in the Cavern of the Stolen Faith, and now there are fiends in there, and Dark Yojimbo, because Shuyan woke up all the Aeons. So you have to go in, and it's this minigame where you have to go in, and it's kind of like,
It's kind of a logic puzzle where the order that you rescue people in matters because people prefer different being first in line versus last in line, or how large the crowd is. So there is a way to rescue everyone in I think the first 12 in one step, and then the last couple in a second step is the most efficient way. But there's basically rescuing people in a certain order will let you clear the quest more efficiently. But and that's not a bad conceit for a dungeon, but
it's not. And it's also a good place to level up. And if you didn't outright buy the Besaid emblem to open the rest of Waka's little cave.
Oh yeah, because it's like 90,000 gil or something, right?
Yeah, which you can theoretically save up for in Chapter 1, but why the fuck would you do that?
and bring up Dark Yojimbo. The Dark Aeons in this game, also disappointing because in the original Final Fantasy X, you come across a Dark Aeon, and you're like when I was playing Final Fantasy X, I stumbled across one of them. I can't remember which one it was, and I was like,
for me it was Dark Valefor trying to return to Besaid.
Yep,
to do something.
Yep, that's exactly the one. And I was like, oh, I am in over my head. This is a bad mamma jamma right here. And I will get my stuff rocked if I try to mess with Dark Valefor. The Dark Aeons that you come across in this game as just part of the main story were pushovers.
They are
so lame.
I had no trouble with them.
They are normal bosses on the easy side.
Right.
Yeah, Anima did her, big, scary, I literally pull you into hell attack, and it did, 16 damage.
Right. It wasn't even threatening.
It's woof. The Dark Aeons, okay, this is going back to 10 real quick, but the Dark Aeons were actually an international edition
Correct. They aren't in the original PS2 version.
Yeah.
But in all the remakes, they're there.
So in the original 10, you could go back to Besaid, get Valifor Second Overdrive, no problem. And that is a mean trick. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, the Dark Aeons in 10-2 are just plot devices. They make you go back to all the temples and fight them, and then later you can choose which hole to jump into to go to the final dungeon. Which apparently, if you jump into all the holes, like you leave and then go back in, you get a garment grid for doing that, and I don't know who thought that was a good idea.
I was curious if there was a difference between jumping in Besaid versus Kilika or something, but
I think it technically changes the starting path of the dungeon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because you are sort of descending towards a center via stepping stones, so that makes sense if you just like go down a different part of the circle. But and you fight a couple of the Dark Aeons in that final sort of path to the core setup of a dungeon, including Anima. But for me, my favorite part of this game was the job system, and the most fun I had was experimenting with the job system. So maybe by extension, my favorite optional quest in this game was the creature arena, because that was a pretty good way of leveling up. They set up some normal, like sensible arena challenges to unlock more arenas. Eventually, they get very hard, and you have to have a really devastating setup or be be at a certain level benchmark to handle them at all. The Dark Aeons aren't intimidating in this game, but Mega Tonberries sure are. Let me tell you. Yeah, the Tonberries in the creature arena will one-shot you if you're not prepared for them, which happened to me. But in the creature arena, you don't get a game over; it just sends you back to the menu. So that's a real fun way to level up and get some decent equipment. And
that is nice. That is nice.
And then by the end of the game, I had sort of picked. Like, I think I had Pain max out Warrior, Yuna max out White Mage, Riku max out Black Mage, and then equip grids or accessories to use those skills in other jobs. And at the end of the game, I was switching between, depending on the character, Gun Mage, Psychic, Alchemist as supports, and Samurai, Berserker, Dark Knight as sort of point attackers. And sort of just rolled with those 6 jobs the whole game. And I know that Mascot's the best job, but it's hard to unlock. And Lady Luck can be very powerful if you invest in it and use the slots right. But like having a pretty good job system where I was able to pick out a couple favorites was really satisfying for me. And I was having more fun doing regular fighting and leveling up and tinkering with jobs than any side quest or part of the main quest, which is a little sad.
I agree. I mean, I was getting in the zone doing that too. Like, that's just part of the fun, where it's just like, this is just a chill RPG, level up your jobs.
Yeah, I found that to be the most enjoyable too. But like, what can we say? We're like JRPG grinding piggies.
All through. I mean, we work for RPG Fan and all love RPG grinding at least to a degree.
I will run on that treadmill for 1 drop of dopamine, guys.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the RPG part of this RPG is sometimes fun, but I think that is just structurally and content-wise just such empty calories. Maybe you'll enjoy a few bites of it, but you'll have regrets afterwards. This is...
Once I maxed out Dark Knight on everybody, and I had Yuna maxed out as a White Mage, I mean, that was it. The Dark Knight job is so... I maxed out Warrior for Pain as well, but it's like... once you unlock Dark Knight, like, the other jobs are all like... Wow, this is kind of interesting, but Darkness. Because if you spam Darkness, it is an AoE that hits everything for non-elemental damage... And you can just keep doing that.
So, and even enemies, like there's a couple enemies in the final dungeon that are immune to physical damage, and but darkness will still work on them.
So literally, my whole battle strategy just became darkness, Curaga, darkness, Curaga.
But even better than that, because the Dark Knight has some black magic spells, it actually has pretty high MP. So if you throw black magic or white magic onto a Dark Knight, it's way better than throwing that spell onto, say, a Berserker. And the Dark Knight's a little slow, but otherwise doesn't really have any weaknesses. I love the samurai attacks, Sparkler and Fireworks. I think they deal like 7 times regular attack damage. So naturally what I did was I leveled up Pain to learn a couple samurai skills, and then had her as a Dark Knight the rest of the game. The only other class that I think is nearly as powerful as Dark Knight is Psychic, because you can become immune to, I think, 7 of the 8 types of damage just naturally if you level up Psychic enough, and it already has above average stats. But this is just a fun class system to play around in. That is a little bit easy to break, but this is a single player game. We're not trying to balance this for EVO 2021 or anything.
Competitive Final Fantasy X too. It's just we're just playing Sphere Break.
Sphere Break. Oh
that's
boy,
that's just a good version of Dissidia T.
I figured out that the way to win
a good version of Dissidia.
No, this isn't a good version of anything. But the Sphere Break.
Neither is Dissidia.
It's like once you learn how to count to 3 or 4 and just keep using the echo over and over, you can win any game of Sphere Break a little mindlessly. But so I got it to unlock the Lady Luck job and then just never played it again.
Right. I did wind up doing the Cactuar quest. Not because, honestly, it's a really obnoxious quest because you have to keep going back to the starting area to get the next one to spawn. Figure out the riddle of where it is. I just used a guide because I don't have time for that. Play a minigame with it, which you do not have to win, which is good because the minigame is obnoxious. This obnoxious timing-based mess. But at the end of it all, you do get some pretty sweet rewards, and one of the game's super bosses, Angramenu, who is harder than Vegnagun, I'll say that. It's not the hardest boss in the game. That's I think its name is Major Numerous and Trema are the 2 like super bosses in the big optional dungeon. But Angramenu is an okay fight. It's just a big tough fiend with 2 little appendages it can revive, and it gives you a ribbon when you beat it. It also has the funniest Final Fantasy wiki description, because I was looking up tips on it, and the first paragraph is like, this is one of the few creatures in Final Fantasy X-2 that is not a palette swap of a Final Fantasy X enemy. And I just died.
Because Angramenu is a... I mean, that's the classic eyeball Ahriman boss, right?
I think it's not. That's not what it looks like in this. In this, right. It looks like your ship, the Celsius, but with like skulls all over it. It is still a cool fight, but yeah, no, I think Ahriman. I think it's from the same mythology that Ahriman comes from.
Yeah, well, Ahriman is a sort of a devil figure in Zoroastrianism, and but then the sort of Final Fantasy eyeball with bat wings. Version of Ahriman was one of the final bosses before Cloud of Darkness in Final Fantasy III, and I thought Angramenu was a version of Ahriman or a palette swap of Ahriman because Angramenu in Final Fantasy XIV is exactly one of those. It's a raid boss in the Crystal Tower set.
I hated that boss.
Yeah, you should watch a video of that one before doing it. It's a complicated one. But that made me slightly more interested in the Final Fantasy X-2 post game. But then I remembered everything else I went through, and I'm not interested anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like would I say it's worth going out of your way to do it? Not really. But I wanted to be leveled up enough for the final boss. I wanted the ribbon without like calibrating lightning towers. There is another one in the Bavel Underground, which you have to solve that puzzle with the rotating.
Towers?
Up. The towers, yeah. You
have to fight like 8 bosses in a row to get the ribbon at the bottom of the well.
Yeah, right. And you've got to do it a certain amount of time so the platforms are in the right spot. And also don't accidentally reset it like I did, because then you have to do it all over again. But,
great.
But status elements in RPGs are like the bane of my existence. So I was like, ribbon, good. I want ribbon.
Yeah, this game has a lot of status elements in it, and sometimes if you run into a boss that can petrify or stop you, you're cooked. And but fortunately, I don't think any of the main bosses in the story leaned hard into status ailments, because that could have tripped me up, but didn't, because I didn't have a lot of status protection equipped. But there's a lot of status ailments. The Marlboro,
pointless.
The Marlboro bad breath can put 9 icons next to you if it lands.
In any Final Fantasy game, Marlboros are just the bane of my existence. Like, they were the bane of it in Final Fantasy X in the in the final dungeon before you.
That's right. Yeah, I remember dealing with them.
They're so rough. Because they're really rough. And basically, I'm just scarred now. So whenever I see a Marlboro in any Final Fantasy game, I'm like, please stay away from me. I don't want to do this.
It showed up in the 16 trailer, just like, not again. No.
Yeah, yes.
No.
Oh my god, I saw that and I shuddered a little bit. I was like, oh, I don't know about this, guys.
Oh, another bullet point on why Dark Knight is the best class in the game. They have they can equip skills to be immune to stone, curse, and death, and instant death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does make them a lot easier. And since their main attack, again, darkness, they don't need to... It's not a physical attack. It's not really a magic attack. So silence and blind don't affect it.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the strategy for Angra Mainyu is having one of the ribbons on your healer and then just having the other 2 Dark Knights be up and just don't bother healing them because they'll be fine. And that's it. Like, that's the strategy. You just stay alive, spam darkness.
I mean, I mentioned the 6 jobs that I like to use in this game. I had each character sort of main 3 or 4 of those jobs, plus Yuna had White Mage, Riku Black Mage, and Pain Warrior. I would just have them cycle through their entire sphere garment grid at the beginning to get whatever bonus was attached to the grid, and maybe cast haste on themselves or big guard with gun mage along the way. So after a bunch of quick change artistry for about 2 minutes, they all had buffs, they all had boosts, they were in their ideal class, and they just annihilated every boss battle. It was was fun to a degree, but a little bit like the idea of taking all of this weirdness from this job system that was fun to tinker around in into an endgame challenge, either with the endgame boss like Angra Mainyu or the highest levels of the creature creator Coliseum. Like that's fun, but so much of the rest of this game isn't fun that I'm not interested in revisiting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I only basically Yuna, I had her. The only jobs I really did for Yuna were Songstress, Festivalist, and White Mage. For Riku, I did Festivalist and Black Mage. And for Pain, I had Warrior.
Yeah, at the end of the game, I had Yuna as a gun mage and Dark Knight, mostly.
It's a fun one.
Yeah.
Riku as an alchemist, or if I wanted to make her a full attacker, a berserker actually, and then Pain switched between mostly Dark Knight and Samurai. But they actually made berserkers pretty fun in this game. And all 3 women I had as the psychic class, because if I didn't know what to level them up in, I just made them psychic for a while because it's powerful and requires 1 million AP to max. And
the costumes are cool.
And the costumes are cool. Yeah,
I love Yuna's psychic design.
And they did put some effort into these costumes because they are outlandish and sometimes interesting. And I think almost every character has a unique victory animation in every job. So
unique animation and unique quote.
Yeah, so we're talking 60 to 70 unique animations, and with some of them getting pretty crazy. Like they all have breakdance moves into like a kitty cat pose for their berserker wins, and it's like we almost made a joke about this game doing some copy paste work from FF10, even though we know the work is more complicated than that. But there was a lot of character modeling and animating that went into this game. But and I think this is a problem with both FF10 and 10.2. Characters over animate a lot. Like they have giant herky jerky exaggerated movements even in regular conversations. Like you can find videos of people just mimicking the facial movements of or the body movement of Yuna and Tidus in a normal conversation in 10, and they look like crazy people.
Yeah, Praz did that. I'm pretty sure. The voice actor,
and I think it's because these were early PS2 games where the Japanese developers were still of the philosophy of early 3D. We have to have big movements to for characters to stand out more, and maybe they were even taking pieces from Kabuki theater or something where there's a lot of very big movement, broad movement, associated with certain emotions or certain lines but it just looks in 2020 where we're used to some pretty sophisticated 3D character modeling and a lot of sort of nuanced expression in video games now. Going back to FF10-2's giant movements is a little jarring. Yeah, oh man.
It's the giant movements and the dead eyes that really get me. Where it's because it feels like an extension of the SNES games where you'd have them. There was a very limited range of what they could showcase in terms of emotion. So they had to exaggerate it to the best of their ability with these little pixels. And it just kind of feels like they blew that up for the PS2 era, but they didn't fix the eyes. And so the eyes are just the movements could be as big and flamboyant as you want.
Monkey!
And then the eyes are just God, I am so dead.
I mean, it's a little bit, little bit, what's the term I'm trying to think of? Uncanny Valley. Where you have these characters with hollow dolls' faces, but otherwise movements that are clearly the animators trying to make them lifelike, and it's a little unsettling at times. But the production of the pre-rendered cutscenes is pretty great. I think that the both of the concert scenes are gorgeous to behold.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Square is still really good at CG, and also I think the quality of the HD remaster is really good as well. It is a little... They got new character models for most of the main cast, just like they did with 10. They are very particular about when they use those new models. There are times where you'll have, in the same scene, a character with its brand new, much more expressive model alongside a character who has their old dead fisheye model, and it's sometimes literally at one of the very opening cutscenes, you have Yuna's new model in a split screen with old Yuna, and it's so jarring. But for the most part, it looks sharp. The new menus look sharp. I think by and large, they really they took effort to this is a funny weird development story, but because they had to switch the game from a 4:3 ratio to a widescreen ratio, they had to change how the game loads in assets because they would have situations where a boss model was just off screen. So if they just widened the aspect ratio, they would start loading in all these extra assets. So by and large, I think they did a really good job with this HD remaster, and it's probably the best looking version of 10 or 10.2 that you can play today.
Yeah,
I did still have a weird audio desync glitch during the final cutscene, and I'm not sure what's up with that.
Yeah, I'm playing the PS3 version, which doesn't have is maybe not quite as HD ready as the PS4 version, but it mostly looks fine. And I think I did run into desynced audio a couple times, but it wasn't chronic. But what was I'm trying to think of this total package here. I think that I'm not sure I can recommend FF10-2. It's a weird playground with too many rides that might give you splinters. You know what I mean? Like FF10 is FF10
it's like the old rusty playground that might give you tetanus. But it's the only. But if it's the only playground nearby, you're gonna send your kids to it.
It's like those old cool wooden playgrounds that were built in the 80s and 90s, but they had to remove a bunch of them in the 2000s because they were falling apart and giving kids splinters.
We had Timbertown in Holland.
Where I used to live. FF10 is that cool tunnel going through the middle of that wooden playground, and FF10-2 is the your memory of that playground. as you remove splinters from your fingernails.
Also, you're a 20, 30-year-old man, and you should probably get out of the playground.
I was working a little too hard to make that analogy work. I have some regrets. But
You're good.
There are good parts to 10-2. We haven't really talked about the music a lot. Those two pop songs are well produced and fun. Yeah. And I
honestly love 1,000 Words. I think that song is really, really good.
And and it has a lot of a lot of funk, a lot of energetic pop in the even things like the menu music and the walking around the airship music. And some of the design choices I think they're mostly a little too silly, but they made the Celsius is kind of a giant Bosuzoku bicycle. Like if you look at how the cockpit is set up, it has those giant handlebars that brother wields, and he revs it like a motorcycle, and its two sort of forward wings are kind of like motorcycle wheels. I think they're making it's a Japanese biker gang joke.
Is that what it's going for? Because I thought it was a lobster.
I think it's they're making fun of giant Japanese motorcycles, but that's I could be off there, but this.
No, you could go. You're probably right. I'm just saying. I think it looks like a lobster.
But it's. I think the game is too silly for me to have as much fun as I wanted to have. But the parts I did enjoy, like the job system, like I kind of want to see those in more Final Fantasy games, because it's like a step forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps sideways, and I didn't hate this game, but this is probably my least favorite retro encounter game of 2020.
I feel like this game's director, and also the director of 10 was Motomu Toriyama, who would later go on to write The Third Birthday, make of that what you will, and he also directed and wrote all 3 Lightning Final Fantasy 13 games. All of which are, they're flawed games in their own right, and that's a topic for another day, but I do find it kind of interesting that the garment grid system almost feels like an early version of the paradigm shift system, in that you press the shoulder button to bring up your list of preset options, and then you switch to it in combat on the fly, which is something all 313 games have. And Lightning Returns even brings back combat, not just costumes, like costume changes. They call them something else. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But that game almost felt to me more like what 10-2 wanted to be, if that makes sense. It's a pseudo open world game with literally, actually, Eva, a Majora's Mask style time limit, and the game, and you have that time limit. You have to manage your time wisely, because you can only get side quests done on certain days. Unlike Majora's Mask, it doesn't loop.
There is so much missable content in 10-2, while Majora's Mask, it's a cycle you're doing over and over, so you can do some quests some days and avoid ones other days, and repeat the loop as many times as you want until you get accomplish the goals you want.
Yeah, and while Lightning Returns doesn't have that, it does have a secret 14th day you can unlock if you manage your time really well. I feel like 10-2 is kind of like, it's trying to go for this more open world, completion percentage based thing, but it doesn't really quite know what to do with that. It doesn't clearly communicate what you need to do to get there. You sort of just have to figure it out, and they want you to play it again to get those missing things. The problem is, again, I don't think it's compelling enough to play it again right away, if ever. 10 is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. 10-2 is okay.
With this game, when I'm playing a video game, the thing that I look for most is generally like what grabs me thematically, and I've brought this up numerous times, and that can be the writing, that can be the mechanics, characters, etc. But I usually want it to be some sort of unified whole. And I think the biggest problem with Final Fantasy X-2 is that there are some good ideas, interesting choices that are made, but it never supports other choices that are made in this game. And I think that's a really egregious mistake. If you're kind of having a main theme of the game being Yuna creating a path for herself, and she becomes a songstress or whatever, then why does she have all these other jobs that she can take on, and that it might be like better suited for a situation rather than actually being what she wants to do? Like, I don't see Yuna being a berserker. That doesn't really make sense to me. And I don't see Pain being a white mage, and I don't see Riku being a black mage, but I still used her in that role because it was useful for the bosses. And so it kind of felt like it was betraying that. And then just some of the weird mechanics, like the piano that we didn't bring up at the end of the game. What the heck? Why was there... Why?
Can we talk about how Vegnagun is entirely operated by keyboard?
It's a church. It's operated by church organ.
What is he just a prog rock song?
So I mean, I'll admit, Bevel, that is a great way to up the security of your Doomsday weapon. Whoever plays it has to be like fluent in frickin' Mozart, but. But, oh my god, it's not enough that Vegnagun looks like a gigantic Beetleborg with a huge cannon sticking out of its face. Like, it also has to be operated by musical instrument.
That's so random.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was a cicada motif, because the cicadas are so noisy. And are sometimes compared to musical instruments or a chorus, but it was just a weird design in general, and I didn't understand why a bug has like a horned demon face.
It's supposed to be a beat. Is it supposed to be a beetle? It has like these wings like sticking out of its back, like made of darkness. That I admit it, I do think the final boss sequence is like visually interesting in that like it's got a lot of moving parts going on in the background. There's probably some clever PS2 era trickery going on. But yeah, the design of the thing is trying so hard to be scary, and it just falls flat.
I do think it's supposed to be a cicada motif. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but I don't think it looks great.
No, it doesn't. When its mouth opens up and it's just like big gun, I'm just like, okay. We're doing this now.
Yeah, but it has but they just again, this is just a kitchen sink of a game. They threw so many things into the pot, but it doesn't all work. It has a demon face and a dragon tail and insect legs and maybe insect
legs.
Yeah, and maybe insect wings. It's so strange. But I believe that the kernel of the idea with FF10-2 was sequel starring Yuna. Girl power, and definitely some music video Yuna performances. But just like filling the gaps around that was, such a mixed bag. Great combat, great job system, pretty good music, just some terrible new characters, some uninteresting mini games, and this completion percentage gimmick that I have been a broken record on, but I hate it so much. And and every guide I checked when I wanted to figure something out in this game had it in the context of completion percentage, which just I found so annoying. And again, FF10-2, I don't think it's a bad video game, but I think it is just an empty calories RPG that I never want to touch again.
Yeah, it is. Like, I agree with you, and I agree with you, Ava. Like, thematically, this game, like, there are kernels of ideas here and there that it does not capitalize on. Like, the idea of Yuna becoming her own person, choosing a career path in life. Like, there's something there, like, of, like, and I think, and the whole concept of the songstress dress sphere and, like, her doing performances is only touched on, like, once or twice. It doesn't really play a role in the story. It doesn't, like, the Sphere Hunter thing doesn't really play a role in her story.
No, the Sphere Hunter, the Sphere Hunter angle is just to get you spheres, and the dress sphere thing is only to have Yuna come into contact with Len, do the concert in Chapter 4, and then sort of Len and Chuyin reuniting at the very end. Those are that's the only time it ever figures into the story.
Yeah, and bringing Tidus back if you do all the stuff, which I agree is like kind of a thematic, like it's a big 180 from 10, and I just think it's really. I think the normal ending where okay he kind of hugs her and then she like accepts that it's time to move on is, and that we live in a universe where we can literally go to the beach and talk to ghosts. if you really want to talk to your dead boyfriend that much, there's ways you can do that, sweetie. But literally bringing him back to life, having Bahamut literally just materialize and be like, sup, you want your boy toy back? Like, come on, no.
Yeah, and yeah, I wouldn't necessarily. I also wouldn't necessarily say that this is a quote unquote bad game, because there's nothing about it that like really makes like
it's not broken.
Like, it's not broken, and there isn't anything that makes me, like, contrary to what I said last episode about, like, the designs, that was more of a joke that, like, it made me viscerally angry. But there are some times where I've played things in games where it's been really upsetting. Like, you know, some of the things in Catherine, very upsetting. But, you know, there's nothing that's genuinely very, like, to my core upsetting about this experience. But I don't think it really succeeds on the things that I was trying to do. If this was basically just, like, Destiny's Child, the JRPG, and you just followed Yuna around to do these different concerts in pursuit of peace or something like that, and that was more of it, oh my god, would I be down for that?
What if that was the plot of Theater Rhythm?
Well, okay, that's almost the plot of like Sakura Wars, or at least some of them. But what if the Gullwings? What if the Gullwings were traveling players instead of sphere hunters? And
I'd be into that.
And the game was a concert tour, but this old dress sphere Yuna found sort of has the spirit of this person in it that sends them on a new quest. We already, just off the top of our heads, we came up with a more interesting story structure for this game. Like the sphere hunter stuff and how empty it is, I find so frustrating.
Yeah.
I guess I just have to play Sakura Wars then, because that seems to be what I'm looking for.
The new one has designs from Tite Kubo.
It's Tite Kubo.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm
Tite Kubo.
Tite Kubo. I'm sorry. I was a weeb in high school. I don't know how to pronounce any of this stuff.
But well, Tite Kubo is the author of the manga Bleach. He is doing he was quiet for several years, but he did the character designs for the new Sakura Wars and is working on a new series called Burn the Witch.
Which is canon to Bleach.
Yeah, weirdly. I'm not going to try to understand advanced
It's
Bleach
like the
stuff.
London division of the Soul Society. I love it. I'm sorry.
It's really cool.
My mid-2000s weeaboo is showing. I apologize. But, yeah, anyway, Sakura Wars is like the good version of Final Fantasy X too.
Well, I'm not sure if the new one's good, but I
heard it was good.
It was 5 games from sort of in between the Saturn PS1 era to the PS2 era, and the 5th one did come out in English as Sakura Wars So Long My Love. In Japanese the series called Sakura Taizen. But yeah, but that's about a group of traveling players that fight mecha battles in between songs. They
already better.
They definitely have their fans, and one of the famous Segata Sanshiro commercials in Japan was for I think Sakura Taizen 2. I'd have to check a list to confirm that. But
I think I tricked my old roommate into buying Sakura Wars 5, and he never forgave me.
Yeah, that was a PS2 game. I think it might have had a Wii port as well. I'd have to.
It had a Wii port.
Okay, yeah. I think
a Wii in the dorm room.
Right, I think I had that on PS2.
Ask Scott from RPG Fan about how he feels about Sakura Wars So Long My Love.
Yeah, I know. I think Nathan reviewed it for the site, and like Nathan and Mark liked it, but Scott didn't. I'm trying to. This is a fuzzy memory of something that happened months ago, which feels like 20 years ago.
Nathan and Mark liked it, but I remember a few months ago, Scott was streaming Sakura Wars So Long My Love, and he was just dying. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, why am I doing this?
Right. So, okay, if we're talking about the most recent Sakura Wars games and tight Kubo character designs, I think we're near the end of the episode. Thank you so much.
Oh, we don't want to talk about the weird roguelike that comes packaged with this game. None of us played it.
Oh yeah, that's a last mission. None of us played it. None of us want to play it. If you want to play a roguelike, play Hades. End of discussion.
Yeah, Hades is great.
But speaking of Hades, Hades is developed by Supergiant Games, and we are doing a special Supergiant Games month in December. 3 episodes, one each dedicated to Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre, coming in December. I love all 3 of those games to varying degrees for different reasons, and it's gonna be really fun talking about them with some Retro Encounter panelists. But also in December, is the 25th anniversary of the Tales of series. So we're gonna have a special episode all about Tales of, playing a real silly game, drafting a bunch of Tales characters in a fantasy sports draft, to make 5 teams of Tales nonsense. It's gonna be a weird, messy episode, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out.
Oh yeah.
So that is most of December for Retro Encounter. Retro Encounter is part of RPG Fans Podcast Network. Visit rpgfan.com for its message boards. It also has a Facebook page, an Instagram page, a Twitter page, a Discord server with Scott hating on Sakura Wars, Twitch streaming every day, also including Scott hating on Sakura Wars. And RPG Fan also has 3 other podcasts: Random Encounter about randomness, Rhythm Encounter about RPG music, and Phoenix Edge, which is also a weekly podcast mostly focused on current events. You can review Retro Encounter or those other 3 on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or however listening venue you use. Give us feedback, send some emails, all of those things. Go on the Discord and try to convince Scott that Sakura Wars maybe isn't so bad. But if you want to reach us individually, let's tell them how to do so, starting with you, Eva.
So you can find me on RPG Fans social media, general stuff on Twitter and Facebook. And you can find me on my personals on Instagram, Twitter, and Discord as @EvaLease.
And Peter.
As always, you can find me on Twitter at IHaveFury. You can find me, email me, petert@rpgfan.com. And if I'm ever on Discord, which is rarely, I am Petries.
And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at @TheRealMonsoon most of the time, @EvokeForDogs other times. I am Monsoon Mike on RPG Fans Discord, where I mostly get sports mad and then post the podcast every week. I am most recently sports mad because my beloved Baltimore Ravens are not doing as well this year as I hoped. Speaking of things not doing as well as I hoped, I did not love Final Fantasy X-2. I hope I was not too much of a negative Nelson on this episode, but let's just say I'm eager to move on to Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre.
Yeah, those games are actually good.
Yeah, I've already finished 2 of them and had a great time. But I hope you had a great time listening to us, listeners. Thank you. Good night, and good luck.